I used to hate playing against lower rated players, and I know for a fact many of you watching hate it too. It just puts on a lot of pressure. We feel like if we don't win this game, it's going to be a disaster. It's a disappointment. Anything else than a win doesn't count. And this kind of must-win mentality when facing lower rated opponents creates anxiety, creates stress, creates a lot of pressure, and it creates emotional decisions. We might change our openings just to avoid drawish lines. We might create decisions, play moves that we know are not good, but we're just hoping we can win the game. And that ultimately leads to what we want to avoid the most, losing these games. So in this video, I want to share a 3-step framework that has helped me a ton relieve that pressure and play better chess, which leads to more wins. Let's jump right in. Step number 1 is understanding the math. And this really put so much pressure away from my shoulders when I started understanding that when I play lower rated players, it's not expected of me to win every single game. And more importantly, actually, as you're about to see, often it is more likely that a draw is going to happen than you have to win. So this is a table based on the FIDE rating. The online rating sites are a little bit different, but this is just easier and it kind of applies as well if you're playing online or if you're playing USCF rated. So here we have a table of rating difference between the players and then the expectation for the higher rated player and the lower rated player. Okay, so this is important. So here we see, for example, if you are rated 100 points higher, okay, I have everything prepared that is important. But if you're 100 points higher, you have an expectations of 0.64 points per game. What does that mean? It's easiest to just round it up to 10 games. That means from 10 games, you should make 6.4 points. Now, in our heads, it's very quick that we think, oh, we need to win between 6 and 7 games out of 10 to have this expectation. But that's not true, because draws are also half a point. So what this actually means, we'll get to that, but an expectation of 6.4 points means that if you're winning 3 games and you're drawing 7 games, you score a total of 6.5 points. And so you score above your expectations. You can have more draws than wins, and you score above your expectation when you're playing against someone 100 rating points lower than you. Then we can go up to, for example, 200 points, where your expectation is 0.76 per game, so 7.6 points for a total of 10 games. And then here, this number was just absolutely mind-boggling to me. Only when you are 735 points higher rated than your opponent, you are expected to win all of the times, right? Even if you're like 400 points higher rated, well, you only have an expectation of 0.92, which means that you can squeeze in a draw from time to time and still be in your expected score. So here I prepared a super professional graphic for you to just show that again. If you're 200 points higher rated than your opponent, you can make 5 draws, right? 5 draws and 5 victories, because your expectation is, I think it was 0.74, right? So if you're scoring 75% of the points, you are in your expectation, which is 5 draws, 5 wins. You get 7.5 points out of 10 games. This is so important. When this clicked in my brain, I was like, oh, so if I play someone 200 points higher rated, I will do 50% of my games as a draw. The problem is, once you start overpressing, and we'll talk about this in the second step, but once you start overpressing, you will have losses, which puts way more pressure on you. Not so intuitively, when you push too hard, when you try to forcing the wins, you actually put even more pressure on yourself, because you will lose some games, and then the other games you do have to win. Now, let's go to the plus 100 points, right? It is 7 draws and 3 wins. So when you get into a game against someone that is 100 points lower rated than you, it will be, according to expectations, more likely that this game will finish in a draw and not in a win. And at least for me, like really, I went into these games of like, I need to win this game, especially if I would play the white pieces, but also when I played the black pieces, like avoid a forced draw at all costs, right? Don't play any opening that could lead to a draw. No, I need to win. No, actually not. We have so much chances. We can just play calm chess. We'll get to that later on. We can draw 7 times if we just win 3 games by being the stronger player, by playing calm. We will have the expectation. And even if we squeeze in a 4th win against somebody 100 points lower rated, we're already above expectations, which is great. Now, this number also surprising for me. If you're 40 points, well, 39 points higher rated, right? Your expectation is to draw 9 times and only win 1 single time. And again, that's so important, just puts a lot of pressure away. And then again, this number right here that I showed you before, only if you are 735 points higher rated, you should win 100% of the time. So when we play lower rated players, just let's remind ourselves of these statistics that it's not at all expected from you to win every single time. And that can allow you for a much more calm, a much less forceful, a much less anxiety-driven approach when playing these games. But we can just try to play our best chess. So how do we do that? Well, that's step number 2. Step number 2 is understanding what is your best chance of scoring in these expectations or even above these expectations. And in short, it is to play your best possible chess and not to play hope chess. And I think many of you can relate to this because when we have this kind of feeling of, oh, I need to win, right? This player's lower rated than me, I need to win. There come a lot of strange thoughts that statistically don't make sense, but emotionally, because we feel we have to win at all costs, they do make sense and they create more pain because they create more mistakes, we play worse. So what are these things? For example, I myself and many of my students that I coach and I observe, we try to play different openings against lower rated players. That's especially when we play the black pieces. Kind of the thought is like, let's avoid anything that could be drawish. But wait a moment. So our best chance to score well is to play our best chess. If we want to play our best chess, we should play the opening that we know best, right? That's kind of logical. Why do we think that changing to an opening that we don't know as well, just to avoid a potential draw, which we now know is a very likely outcome, especially if you're not like 700 points higher. And if you are 700 points higher, let's be fair, they don't know how to force a draw, right? So if we're trying to change our opening to something that we don't know as well, just to avoid the draw, what actually happens is we are lowering our skill. So we are lowering the rating gap and we are increasing the chances for our opponents to win the game as well. The same goes with looking at the position, right? And this happened too many times to me, and I know it happens to many of you as well. So you have a position, and you're thinking, okay, move A is the best move, right? But move B looks tricky, and it might lead to a win later on. But we kind of know that move A is better, but we are like, this leads to an end game. I'm not sure if that end game is really going to be squeezable or if I can win this game. So if I'm not sure about it, let's just go with move B. And what happens very often is move B is really bad. We might just end up in a worse position or, you might just straight out lose the game because you blundered something. This is the type of hope chess you don't want to play. Again, what happens is you're picking a move that you know is not the best. And by definition, you're not playing at your best. But your only best chance is just to sit there and play according to your best skills. That's why you have the higher rating, right? You are higher rated because on average, in normal games, you are playing better than your opponent. But if you start making decisions that are not your best decisions, well, you just close that gap. And maybe even your opponent is then suddenly high rated because you're just taking a lot of weird decisions. So this is super, super important. I've lost so many games. And what really stuck with me was this one thing that my last coach, when I was still active, Grandmaster Marcus Rugger, told me. He told me that I was trying to lose the game and not trying to win the game. Because very often there was a good move that was maybe slightly better for me or leading to a equal position. We'll see soon that equal doesn't mean draw, right? And then I would choose the second best move. Well, by definition, if the first is equal, the second best is probably worse for me. So the only thing I do is introduce a chance for my opponent to win the game. This is so painful because, as we know from the statistic as well, is when you start losing games, and it's not like you can never lose a game, right? You can even lose some games and still be, up there with the percentage. But when you start losing more games, you put more pressure on yourself to actually win those games, which creates this anxiety, which creates emotional, not smart decisions, which creates more losses. So you're entering this kind of very bad cycle, and it will just keep on rolling until you switch the way you play. Just play the best possible moves. That's it. Step number 3 is the proper execution of this new mindset and way of playing. And I want to show you this game right here that I played in a super drawish line with black against a player 150 points lower rated than me, clearly wanting to make a draw. Now, 150 points lower rated means I should score 70%, which again means it's okay to make 6 draws and win 4 games. And especially when I play the black pieces, a draw is just even a little bit more likely, so I shouldn't care too much. But actually, you can win these games. So I really want to debunk kind of this idea of, oh, this is too drawish, I can never win this. Come on. If you play better and you just have to win 4 out of 10 games against someone that is lower rated than you, even a drawish position is going to be fine. Don't worry. So let's look at this game. So we get d4, d5, c4, d takes c4. So I start with the Queen's Gambit accepted, which is known to have a lot of lines that look extremely drawish. And my opponent immediately goes into one of those. Knight f3, e6, e3, knight f6, takes on c4. This is very common, castle, c5. And now the first problem that many people see is d takes c5. I did also win quite some games with this against lower rated players. You get into an endgame immediately. But my opponent plays a4. In my opinion, how my opponent plays is even a more drawish line than what you could do with d takes c5. So c takes d4 is happening, pawn takes, knight c6, knight c3, and bishop e7. This is really the moment for white to decide, do I want to play a game for an advantage, or do I try to force a draw or try to get a drawish position? This is very important. And in this position with the isolated pawn, if white plays any other move than the move d5, will be very interesting because I'll play against this isolated pawn. White has attacking chances, right? I can try to stop this isolated pawn and we get a game. But instead, my opponent decides to trade everything. So let's see. Pawn takes, knight takes, knight takes, queen takes, bishop takes. Okay, so everything is getting traded off and we have a similar structure. White is a little bit better developed and many people will say, this is way too drawish. I can never win such a position. Well, let's look at this game because already, let me scroll down. I think in 10 moves, I already have quite a nice advantage. So I play knight to b4, attacking this bishop on d5 and asking the first question. You can also switch on the engine. So you see, this is really just slightly better for white. Bishop e4. And I play the move f5. I play castle first, bishop d2 and f5. No, not f5 yet, still a5. I was thinking about f5, takes on b4, bishop d5. And here I actually mention, I can try to show you this, is just too drawish. So you can choose in between the lines that you can play. You can choose what looks too drawish and what not, but you don't have to be scared of every single line that leads to an endgame. So in this position, I play the move a5, but you see that this is objectively still good, right? I'm not playing a trashy move. I'm not kind of throwing everything in one basket, trying a trick. No, I'm just playing sound moves that keep a little bit of play alive. So a5 is happening, rook to c1, play rook to d8, bishop e3. Okay, and now finally I only had this idea that f5 was a move I played. Finally, I get to play this move without having to care about bishop takes b4. That was my note. And we get out with the bishop. So the idea from this move is I can't really play bishop e6, right? Because bishop on b7 would be hanging. and the pawn on b7 would be hanging. So I play f5, bishop b1, and rook to a6, trying to develop this rook this way. I'm not even sure why I didn't play bishop e6. Oh yeah, knight d4. Right? Knight d4, just running into it, and the f5 pawn would be lost. So I don't want to do that. Going rook a6, again, you can see that I have so many choices, right? There are many choices, my opponent has many choices. But it's still a game. It's not like this is dead draw. And my opponent is a strong player. There's a FIDE master with 23-27 rating, right? So if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh my God, I can't beat these 1500s in an endgame position, well, they will make so many mistakes still. So there is so much play left. Bishop to d4 is happening. Play bishop to d7. I was trying to get a weakness, right? I wanted white to push b3, and then later on I can attack this pawn. Not going to happen just yet. Bishop, rook fe1, and I played bishop to d6, and my opponent goes b3. And I was giving a question mark, exclamation mark here. That is my notes from like, when did this happen? 7 years ago or something like that. So I was happy to see that weakness. I was thinking during the game and in the analysis that knight e5 would be interesting. But here comes psychology into play from the other side. When your opponent is wanting to force a draw, they usually don't consider active moves that create difficult positions. Okay, so this is a huge advantage for you actually. If you know your opponent only wants a draw, you can kind of discount some of the more dangerous and aggressive ways for them to play. And this is a huge advantage. First, it lowers the risk of losing the game. And second, you kind of know what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. So my opponent here doesn't want to trade off the a4 pawn against the f5 pawn, even if I thought during the game that this was the right play for white, because actually my king is getting just a little bit weakish here. And it's not clear how I'm going to use these two pawns to create a passed pawn just yet. So I liked white's position here, even though the computer now is saying, well, this is just equal, or even black is a little bit to be preferred. But this was what I was fearing during the game, and b3 I was pretty happy. Play g6, just protecting this pawn. And now my opponent goes knight e5, and this is already a slight mistake because it allows me to create imbalances. And creating imbalances is nice for trying to play for a win, but again, we don't have to force them. So I play bishop e6. Maybe my opponent missed something with knight takes g6, right? Maybe they were thinking this, rook takes e6, and missing bishop takes h2. So there are these small tactics, right, that we might see more than our opponent because we are higher rated and a stronger chess player. So knight to c4 is happening, and here bishop f4, I was happy. Again, I could take on h2, king h2, rook d4, but I didn't really like knight takes a5, and then on e6, there will be hanging. But even this position, again, I'm already a tiny bit better. I can push already. But I like bishop f4, attack on c1, attack on d4. So bishop e3 is forced. I take on e3, and rook takes e3. And here you see one of the things, like now white should have to play f takes e3 to keep the game kind of in the level direction. And the so obvious move rook takes, because this just destroys your structure, kind of closes down the rook. What is that move, right? Rook takes e3, already I have a serious advantage. So we just played normal moves, but my normal moves were better than his normal moves. And that's why I'm starting to put a lot of pressure on my opponent, right? That's it. So f takes e3. Even here, I have this funny move, rook d3. That's kind of a spoiler because that will come later on as well. But I can also take on c4. And again, I created already the imbalance of the knight against the bishop. And I just like black's position right here. So I can still push. It's not over. So I take on c4. There is a big thing that rook takes c4 leads to a checkmate. So you don't want to do that. B takes c4 and rook d6 is happening. And here we can already say, white has two weaknesses. We have a nice pawn structure. I have a dream of putting a knight on c5, which is positionally extremely nice. And I have a second dream that this bishop at the moment doesn't really have a safe square. right? So if I could somehow attack it, I might even win this bishop, and we'll get to that soon. So rook c1 is happening. I play rook to d1, very important, you can't take here, right? Again, I have different moves. I could play king f8, knight a6. Now already is the moment of really pushing for a win. Play rook d1, take on e1, and I play king to f7, centralizing my king. Rook d4 is happening. And you can see again that white has to play kind of weird moves. Like rook e5 is what happened in the game, and we'll see why this is very tricky for white to play. What is g4? Like a lower rated player that wants to just make a draw, they will never do such a move, right? It's just, okay. Like why not h5? Right? So the computer finds like these kind of incredible ways to defend, but why would white just give up this g4 pawn for seemingly nothing? Doesn't really make sense to a human. So rook e5 is happening, and I've found this incredible resource during the game that I found extremely interesting. And again, the computer is not fully agreeing. I'm saying 0-0, but this is just also, I'm not a computer. I can't play just always the best computer move. But rook d3 is very, very interesting. And I remember that my opponent just nearly fell off his chair when I played this. Clearly, my opponent was expecting this, rook d7, and now, you know, this rook is very active. I'm not up any material. This is going to be hard to win because I also can't build up with b6, right? This knight has to stay here. The rook has to stay here. That's not easy to win. So I was playing rook to d3. And I thought this was very interesting. The main point is bishop d3, knight d3, and I take a rook on e5, right? So that's not working. The second thing is that after rook takes a5, I'm going to play rook b3. And again, we can see that the computer is saying, well, this is equal. But white is forced to sacrifice their bishop. So we continue keeping a game going. Yes, the computer can say 0-0, or yes, the computer can say minus 0.1. But by now, I probably already had a time advantage on the clock as well. And I'm just putting pressure, continue to put pressure. It's 31 moves already. My opponent needs to find more moves, more moves, more moves. And hey, if my opponent finds 50, 60, 70 great moves, then let's do a draw and let's try it again, right? We know that a draw is not a catastrophe. So bishop f5, gf5, rook f5. Not the best move. King d2 apparently is best, which is very hard to play for a human again. So takes here, I go king g6, rook to b5. And this was my idea, rook to b2. Now this king is cut off. You can't take here because of check. Right? And I'm picking up this rook for free. And this is, again, this is very nasty to play for white. I have threats like knight d3, can then pick up f2 with the rook or with the knight. White always has to think, well, is it a draw if we exchange rooks or not? Right? So this is really tricky to play. Plays king to d1. And now I go knight d3. And this is very nice because if we trade now, I trade with a check, and then I capture either pawn, and this should be kind of winning. Now, it's interesting that this, back in the day, when engines were a little bit less strong, but you see also with this engine, is not even clear for the computer if this is actually winning or not. But this looks very good. This really looks very good. Knight is coming to c5, and this is just 2 pawns for the knight, and I have 2 pawns left. And if even the computer is not sure, and now it seems like it's winning for black, but like practically speaking, again, such a great chance, and my opponent will very, very likely not do it. So what did they do? They made this very logical king d1, very logical move, f3, and now objectively, I'm winning. And I even have this, this comment in here. Oh, you can't fully see it. Let me show you. Let me show you this. I said, now I knew it's over, my friend. So I was pretty happy apparently during the game. And when I was analyzing this game, I felt like I had it in the bag right here. Yep. Okay. So I take on g2, takes on b7. Now I'm not giving the check. I take on h2. Why not? And this h pawn will decide the game. So we get a5, rook a2, rook b6, king g5, a6, and now I push the pawn h5. And this king is not going to help at all. I'm just running my pawn up, and there is this very common motive that when I push my pawn on h1, I can give a check and then grab the rook on h1. So we go here, knight check, knight takes c4, king g6, and here my opponent had enough because I will also win this pawn and then I will run this pawn down. I think the most logical way to continue would be here, knight e3, kind of rook c6, king g5. But again, you just can't do anything against this pawn running up the board. And this is how I had a what looks like absolutely absurdly drawish position, and I just played logical moves. I just continued playing. And now, I don't mean that you guys have to play on the same level as me, but when you're playing 150 points higher than your opponent, if your average move is just a little bit better, you will create chances. And again, you don't need to win every single game, but the odds are stacked in your favor. If you have a long game, you will make good decisions. You play on your level. You don't make hope chess stupid moves, right? You will get your chances and actually win some games. And I just want to show you this one more game, just the opening. What can actually happen? Now, I'm playing a Grandmaster that is 50 points lower than me, right? So it's not a huge difference right here. Yeah, you see it. But it's still, I'm higher rated, so I have a little bit positive expectation. And what I decided to do here is just play my repertoire. So I was playing the Petrov. I was at that time studying to play the Petrov. I was saying, okay, that's fine. Even if they are a little bit lower rated, let's play it. If there is a drawish, line happening, because this is known as a super drawish opening, maybe I get a chance, maybe I don't. And what happens sometimes is that your opponent is actually helping you getting a game, because what my opponent does here really surprised me. Plays knight c3, knight c6, and also the 4 knights can be very drawish. But now they go a3, basically passing me the ball and saying, hey, you can have the opening advantage if you want to. I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm happy to, right? Push d5, bishop b5. Now in this moment, I think if I trust my notes here, I should play knight takes e4. And you see that already black is slightly better, but I push d4. And the key thing is I got a game. I got an interesting position that was double-edged very quickly. d3 takes, queen d5, and now we traded on c6. And I got a game, right? This position is very, very double-edged. I was in very good shape, and I ended up winning this game in what was it? 27 moves with black, right? Again, I wasn't pushing it, and sometimes some lower-rated opponents do want a draw. But some lower-rated opponents just want to play chess. They enjoy playing a game. They're like, no, this guy plays knight f6. I don't even want to go into Petrov, even if I'm lower-rated. I don't care. I want a game. And you get a game by just playing your normal chess. So that's also a very good reminder. You don't have to sit there with the anxiety that every single opponent that is lower rated than you is going to be hyper focused on making a draw and just trying to trade down every single piece. And even if they do, as you saw before, you still have your chances. So this is how you will be less anxious and get better results against lower rated players. Step number 1 is understand the math. You don't have to win every single game, even if you're like 200 points higher rated. That's super important. That takes the pressure off of you, better expectation management. Step number 2 is your best strategy is simply playing at your best level. So play the moves that you think are best. Don't go for hope chess. Don't play different openings just because you think it will throw your opponents off. No, it will throw yourself off. You're playing something that you know less well. So just play the stuff that you know best and see what happens. And step number 3 is execute. Play games, play long games, be okay with end games. Just do what you think is the best possible move. Yes, if you can decide between 5 different moves and one is going immediately into a repetition, you can pick another one. But don't pick moves that you know are worse or much worse than what you think is best. And even if it looks like a super drawish game, like you saw me playing against this FIDE master, well, you still have your chances and your opponents will still make mistakes. That's how you win games. That's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like it and to subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below and maybe send it to a friend who is always anxious when playing against lower rated players. I hope it helps them too. See ya in the next one.